3, 2, 1, and we are live.
Hey folks, welcome to our Saturday Night Live. Appreciate you being here. Tonight's topic is Cut Dovetails. I know a few things about that. Got lots of great examples behind me. This is our Purple Heart Project fundraiser that we do every second Saturday night. Try to maintain that schedule. Summertime it gets a little crazy. I got a lot of places I'm going to be teaching in the next month. I'll share with you later on tonight. Frick, get a question? As soon as you're ready, Jake, I want to take them around a little tour of what we've been doing. What, Frick?
We didn't receive too many, but it's because we just advertised. So, John D. in Dallas, Texas says, why not cut 2 boards for the pins or tails at once, then use the corresponding pin and tail to make the adjacent board?
Hi, John. Why not cut them at once and then use the corresponding, say that again? Just read the last part.
Why not cut 2 boards for the pins or tails at once?
Stop right there. Yeah, you can do that. That's no problem. Just have to be careful that you don't go below your line, but you can be careful and you can do that. It's actually advantageous because you think about it, you put 2 boards together, you now have, and this is the part that people get into trouble when they learn to cut dovetails, is trying to get that cut across the end of the board perpendicular. It has to be. So if you gang saw, put 2 of them together, instead of having a line that is only 5/8 of an inch wide, you're working on a line that is, in this case, 1 1/8 inches. So it gives you a lot of reference for keeping that saw perpendicular to the end of the board. Really advantageous. Okay, next part.
Next part of the question said, then use the corresponding pin and tail to make the adjacent board.
The corresponding pin and tail. Well, I don't know how you can use the pin, but you could then take that, flip one around and use that to mark out the others. It doesn't work on the drawer because it's going to be a different layout in the back than it is on the front. But if it was on a box, you could certainly do that. I'm not sure what you're thinking in terms of how you could use it to do your pin. Pin has to be individual to each piece if you want it to be exactly precise. Next, Frick. Hey, Royce. Hi. Yeah. Youngest grandson for another week.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's it?
No, Steve in Centerville, Virginia.
Hi, Steve.
Are there any pros or cons to using a fishtail chisel versus your ground half-blind chisel?
Well, the advantage is this. We grind the sides. Most of the fishtails that I've seen, the sides remain perpendicular to the back. So it's a lot harder to push it into the corner because you don't have that relief. So by grinding this on the side, both there and there, if you can see that, Jake, see that?
Yeah.
That allows you to slide underneath, doesn't offer near as much resistance as if this bevel was right up here standing plumb or perpendicular to the back right up here at the front. Makes it hard to push through. If that makes any sense. That's the single biggest advantage. And you don't have to sharpen that. It's a relief angle. Next, Fred.
Kit Redmond in Lawrenceville, Georgia.
Hey, Kit.
Sorry, my mic was muted. Kit Redmond in Lawrenceville, Georgia. I'm getting better with my dovetails. I would appreciate your help on how to keep the saw plumb during the cut.
Well, what can I tell you? First thing you want to do is recognize that if you have a saw, a pistol grip saw, that registers in your hand the same way every time you pick it up. So I always hold it the same way. Mine has a little finger indents there, 1, 2, 3 fingers. This finger, your index finger, presses against the side directly opposite of your thumb, And the two of them like that give a lot of stability to your saw this way. If that finger was tucked in, then it doesn't, but that really solidifies it. So every time I pick up the saw, whether I'm looking or not, I know exactly where the saw is aiming because of that. Next thing you do is when you put the board in the vise, I always keep it low, by the way, to avoid the vibration. You want it to be standing plumb. So I put my square on it, doesn't take long. Just a quick check like that. Now the board's standing plumb. It doesn't take terribly long, and if you think about it, the best trainer for gravity, Trick, you have a mess over there. If I were to drop the saw, it's going to go perpendicular to the earth. And my saw is quite heavy. In fact, our saw weighs about twice what a normal dovetail saw weighs. That was on purpose. That weight really, really helps you determine where plumb is. So I set the saw on there. Between gravity showing me where plumb is and the fact that it registers in my hand, and it doesn't take a tremendous amount of practice before you will learn 0, 10 degrees to the right, 10 degrees to the left. And it's almost like you get 3 little notches in there that really work to your advantage. Now, having said that, I got something even better. So we use what's called the Sean Shim, invention of Sean McDermott's in Oklahoma. And because of that, when we use in combination with our dovetail marking knife, let me come down here for a second and just quickly crank out a couple of cuts. So if we're here and here and here, come on. And then we come back here and here. Scrape off the fuzz. When we actually lay out our dovetail, we use the Sean Shim to determine the offset. So typically it's going to be 24 thou. You put that on there like that. Oh, come on. I don't have my little tape wall on there, but so that is now offset by the thickness of the saw kerf. So I come in here like this and I use my dovetail marking knife and I drag it through the end of the pin board. And I sometimes will do 5 or 6 strokes. Then I'm going to use my dovetail marker and my pen. And I will run a line from my gauge line up to there. Now it used to be, when you were trying to make a plumb cut, you were trying to follow the knife mark up here and that vertical drop line on the front. But because of this, using the dovetail marking knife with the offset, you now have a kerf that you set your saw into. I don't have to guess now. That kerf has already started. That means 100% of my attention can be spent following that line. And you'll find you'll end up making a perfect plumb cut. You can still see the line on there. And it'll happen very easily. And at least in the beginning, the other thing I should mention is you want a saw that will track perfectly. Track meaning once you aim it, it's going to continue on that path. It doesn't veer to the right or to the left. That all has to do with the amount of set. My saw has just 2/1000 of an inch set per side. So when you start the cut, from here on, it's going to continue on that path, as long as you're not squeezing the handle excessively. I just use the web between my thumb and my finger to push it. I'm only holding on with my fingers so it'll pull back and won't fall on the floor. But there's no side-to-side slop in there, so that means that saw has to continue on that path. You don't have very long to get that established, so by the time you've made 2 or 3 strokes, you're almost committed. I shouldn't say that, maybe 4 if they're light. But at this point, I can make a few adjustments, then I see the line, I follow it, and away I go. And I'll follow it right to the bottom. That is probably the best way to manage those plumb cuts. And you want plumb cuts right from the saw. Pardon me. You want, if you can cut the sides of your pins from the saw, plumb, you've eliminated, 3 times the amount of work that anybody else would have to do if they were going and making the cut and then coming in and pairing with a chisel trying to get back to that line. This is the way to do it. Alan Peters said, if you couldn't put your joints together from the saw, you were the guy that swept the floors and cleaned up the shop. Next, Rick.
Steve Wright in Penfield, New Brunswick.
Hey, Steve.
He says, hi,
Close to
Rob.
home.
He says, hi, Rob. Besides drawer construction, what are some innovative or unique woodworking projects that you have incorporated dovetails into?
Wow. Besides, what did he say, drawers?
Yeah, besides drawer construction.
Innovative. Kind of hard to be innovative in woodworking, but if I think, the only thing I can think of that would be outside the norm, I built a desk for my wife out of 2 1/4 inch thick ash and 1 3/8 inch thick walnut. So the ash was the top, big huge slab, and then the uprights were walnut, and that was all dovetailed together. They were monster dovetails. You know, outside of case goods, I can't think of anything else. Case goods, boxes, and drawers. I'll keep thinking about that. Maybe I'll come up with something. Next, Rick. And if you're ever in Grand Bay, come in and see us. Penfield is about a 40-minute drive toward the Maine border.
Frick, I got a quick question.
Go ahead.
Michael Doto said, do you have any tip?
What's his last name?
Doto?
Doto, D-O-T-O?
I don't want to call him Dodo. Do you have any tip on keeping the chiseling plumb when chopping between the tails and pins? I'm getting a hump in the middle.
Yeah, well, that's bad. Bad to have a hump in the middle because then you got to go in and remove it. And the problem is you no longer have some place to set your chisel. So really tough. So what I always teach my students, and of course it comes with practice, take your chisel and your mallet. You have a marking gauge line, we'll put one on there. I'm just going to make a shallow one. I always chop so that I can see plumb, meaning if you try to chop this way, you can't tell where plumb is. But if you chop this way, I can see it. So I set the chisel. I have a tendency now to hold it in my left hand up here with the handle. I use my right hand by anchoring the piece, using my thumb to drag it along until it drops into... What?
Your mallet's blocking it.
Oh. I hold my hand, my right hand that has my mallet, rests on the board. I use my thumb to push it across until it drops into the gauge line. That's the advantage of a sharp marking gauge. I can see plumb, and by having my hand up here without realizing it, maybe it gives me a lot more blade to look at, and then I chop. And the chisel is naturally going to want to go undercut like this because the pressure of the waste pushing against the bevel caused it to force around like that. You always make this cut half from one side, half from the other, which automatically gives you a little undercut in the middle, which is exactly what you want. Now, what you can do to help get yourself started is put that in position, grab a square, put it there just to kind of give you a feel, try to hold that, and then chop away. It doesn't take very long before you can see plumb or recognize it. And that's the real big advantage to chopping that way. The minute you have to come in and remove a bump, where are you going to put your chisel? Well, somewhere here, but there's nowhere to lock it like there was when you initially started and you had the gauge line. So now, starting somewhere here, you have to undercut toward the middle, and then undercut toward the middle from the other side, and hopefully get rid of that. But it just is so much extra work, completely unnecessary. Next question, Frick.
Adrian Abshire says, he's in the chat, he says, what's a good set of chisels to get for dovetails?
Well, okay, we'll address that. We'll address it with size, and we'll address it with brand. Size first. When I go out and travel around and teach, I try to minimize how much I carry with me. I can usually get away with 1/4 and 1/2. However, depending on how small you like your pins, if you like to do little wee skinny pins, then you're going to need a 3/16, maybe even an 1/8. If you're doing big work, well, every time you have to step your chisel along the gauge line, it's one more chance for you to screw up and not get the chisel perfectly parallel to the line, and you get a little divot, and that doesn't bode well. So I would suggest if I was going out, going to get serious about dovetails, and I look around and I see all the stuff I've dovetailed in here, I think I would want an 1/8, 1/4, 1/2, and I'd even throw in a 3/4. And then if I was going to come back and add one, I would put a 3/16. And my 3/16 used to get used a ton because I used to like to really do skinny pins. And if you're doing 3/4 stock with a 1 7 slope, that baseline was always going to be less than 1/4. You had to have a 3/16 for that. And by the way, we just came out with a 3/16. So those are the numbers. If you're doing half blinds, you've got to add to that. Where's my, I'm sitting right here. You have to add a half blind to that. You would, once you've cut half blinds with one of these, you would never want to go back and do it without it. Brand, we make the best. We didn't come into this to take second place. We wanted to make the best. So IBC makes the steel, we make the handle, put it together, test them to make sure that when they come to you, they are flat within a half a thou. That's the chisel you want. It has the side relief. So what you're looking for when it comes to chisels for dovetails is you've got to be able to get in between the pins, which means you have to have a beveled edge, not a beveled top. And that edge has to give you the clearance that you need to get into those corners. You don't, however, I can't believe there's companies that do this, you don't want that bevel running right to the edge. If you do, you end up with a knife edge. And in holding this in your hand, you're going to slice your fingers open. Every class, somebody brings some of those chisels, and they're the guy that ends up using all the Band-Aids. What we do is we put a little wee tiny flat spot right here, which is square to the back. Just small enough to make sure that that bevel doesn't create a knife edge here. I don't know, can you see that, Jake?
Probably not.
Yes, no? I can come closer. No, well, I'll draw it. So here's what your chisel looks like. There's your bottom, there's your beveled edge, and there's your little flat spot right there, so that prevents you from having this sharp knife edge. You do not want that. So get them from us. We stock them. We turn the handles right here. We make sure everything that goes out of here is exactly as we would want it. In other words, you buy chisels from us, it's like taking them off of my bench, except for the fact that you've got to go in there and sharpen them.
Can you show the half blind closer up, please?
Yeah, I'm just going to grab my. I want to grab my IBC half blind. I think it's over here in my other tool cabinet. I got too many tool cabinets. Boys. All right. We do two. We do our IBC half blind. So we start with a 5/8 inch chisel. So if you're doing 3/4 inch material, meaning drawers, this is the one you're going to want. This is the little less expensive. This is the Wood River version, Wood River socket chisel, and we grind that one as well. We grind them here. grind them with a CBN wheel so we don't burn them. So that's what it looks like. You only have to worry about sharpening the end, just like you would a regular chisel. Now, the only habit you're gonna wanna have to break, I would always do this to clean my chisel off, and you don't do that with this, because you'll slice your fingers open. At least you won't do it twice. Next, Frick. How many do we have on tonight?
We have 331 right now.
And anybody watching for vets?
I'm sure
We're low on staff tonight.
Yeah.
Is Ken on?
He is, yep.
He is?
Yep.
Can he call? Is he watching for? Ken, are you watching for vets? And if you are, how are you going to tell me about it? I could get him on the phone.
He could text me.
Okay. Have him text Frick, would you please, so we can give a shout out? If you're a combat wounded vet that has been to our class as one of our scholarship vets, and you're on tonight, we'd just love to acknowledge you. And in saying that, I am going to be, Jake, help me out with the dates. I'm going to be at the Kansas City Woodcraft Store on June 25th. That is a Tuesday. I'm going to be there from 5 p.m. till 8 p.m. I know the store is normally closed, but they're going to stay open for this. We're going to do a Dovetail seminar, a meet and greet. Ralph, combat wounded vet that was in our class, is going to be there. Trent is going to be there, another combat wounded vet that was in our class in 2019. Jeff may possibly be, no, Jeff's not going to be there. And who else? Anyway, anybody else that's around, love to see you. A little sooner than that, this coming Thursday, what's the date? 29th?
May 30?
30? Yes, it is. May 30th in the evening, from 3 o'clock on, I think, I'm going to be at the Woodcraft Store in Clearwater Beach, Florida. That's meet and greet. I'll do some demos. I'll be there to answer questions for people, no cost. You can make a donation to Purple Heart Project, and of course, anytime you want. But I'll be there. If you have any questions, I'll do a little bit of demonstrating while I'm there. That Saturday, which will be June 1st, I'm going to be at the Woodcraft Store in Orlando. Going to be there all day from 10 until 4. Same thing, doing some demonstrating there for consultation if you have questions about hand tools, getting set up. Happy to help. Then jump ahead to June, Jake?
8th and 9th?
6 and 7 and 8.
June 7 and 8, which is a Friday and Saturday. Jake and I and Kevin Burris and who else? Mike Smrek, Tim Harmon, Kyle Perel, combat wounded vet Kyle Perel. We are going to be at Exotic Woods in Burlington, Ontario. That's very near Toronto. If you're anywhere near that area, they're having their 45th anniversary. There's going to be all kinds of deals. It's going to be like a mini wood show. There's going to be other people there demonstrating. We'll be demonstrating all day, both days. All the typical stuff, and then available for questions. We're going to have tons of inventory there too, so we'll be. You can come there to pick up something and save some shipping. We're going to actually have benches for sale there as well. So if you're interested in that, see you there. And the last one is, or did I cover them all?
Well, you went from the furthest back.
Yeah, right, I did. End of June, end of, oh no, oh yeah, and then the big one, the real big one is going to be the date at Mark's.
Oh, okay. I guess you didn't.
Give me the date on that.
June 20.
We are going to be in St. Louis, Missouri
June 27, 2020.
at Mark Spagnola. He's known as the Wood Whisperer. Mark and I are collaborating on we're doing a Dovetail conference Friday night and all day Saturday. There's 2 seminars on Saturday. They both cost money to be there. 100% of the proceeds are going to support the Purple Heart Project. And we are a registered charity. You can get a tax donation for that, for your ticket. It's going to be a barbecue meet and greet on Friday night. It's going to be a half-day seminar on through dovetails in the morning, including your lunch. And then there's going to be half-blind dovetail seminar in the afternoon. You can bring your saw if you want. I always try to get people involved. It's primarily a seminar, but I love bringing people up out of the audience and having them try some cuts, and then we get to help them critique their stance, their body posture, their sawing. Everybody benefits from that when you get a real live, and anybody can participate. So that'll be a lot of fun. We'll have lots of inventory for sale there as well. So you can check our website for those dates. And to get tickets, because there's limited tickets on this one, I think there's only 40 seats available. I don't know what's left, but you go to the Purple Heart Project.
.org.
thepurpleheartproject.org to purchase your tickets. But I think you can get them through Mark's website and through ours. Can you not get them through ours as well? Why would they not do that? Anyway, thepurpleheartproject.com. You should be able to get your tickets on there. Okay, that's what we know. And then somewhere tucked in the middle of June is our next 29th Purple Heart Project workshop, 6-day workshop. And John Hayes is coming. John's coming up from Florida. John is a Marine EOD that's missing all kinds of body parts, both legs, including his hip. And of course he got blown up in Afghanistan, I think. Anyway, great guy and awesome hero, John. Question, Frick?
Yep. Steve Smallwood in the chat says, what are the most common mistakes you see for novice dovetailers?
There's one big one. Don't forget you can donate tonight.
Links there.
Links there.
Are we giving away anything?
Yeah, we give away a prize for every $1,000 we raise. Love to have your support. We need it. You'll benefit from it. The more you give, the more you receive. It's as simple as that. And don't say, if I had it, I would give it. You have to give it before you get it. That's how you get it. Faith precedes the miracle. Remember that. Here's the biggest mistake everybody makes. The cut across the end of the board when you're doing the tails has to be perpendicular. Cannot be off. So what I have my students do is using a 6-inch combination square. They make their cut and then they go in and check it. And by checking it, you have to put your square on it and see. It must be within 1/8 of an inch over 6 inches. So that one is, well, that one's right on. So that's what you want. If you're off, depending on how much you're off, I thought I'd do a dovetail tonight without any layout. Just use dovetail saw, marking gauge, chisel, and a mallet. No layout or anything. See if we can do a minimalist dovetail. What was I just going to say?
If you're off.
Oh, if you're off. Here's the reason why it's so important. Let's purposely get this one off. All right, look at that, and you'll see, Jake, where's my fret saw?
That's not tensioned.
My cuts weren't perpendicular, so how is that a problem? Well, I'm going to show you. We remove the waste. We take our pin board. Anybody got any more wood? Here's all those pieces that were cut up. Here's one. Take our pin tail board, put it over top of the pin board. Now, in order to mark our pins, we're going to do it from the bottom
You want a dovetail marker now?
of our, I'm looking for one right here. We're going to do it from the bottom of our dovetail. So this is our dovetail, this is our pin board. So I would go in here like this, the old-fashioned way, and I would mark, okay? So I don't know if you can see it, but there's the top of my pin. Well, I took the top of my pin from down here, right? When I cut it and put it together, that pin right there, I'm going to run my pen through it so you can see it a little bit better. That pin is going to fit. It's going to go in here, but it's going to end up here. If my saw cuts were angled, that means that this opening, because of the angle of the cuts, is smaller than this opening. And since I traced the top of my pin from the bottom of my tail, but when it goes together, it's going to become up here, this space is bigger than this space. So that is going to be loose up here. There's going to be a gap on both sides. If it happened the other way around and your sloping cuts went the other way, now you're going to go in and you're going to trace a pin that is going to be bigger than where it's going to end up sitting. And now it's going to split something because as it forces its way up, something has to give. Single biggest mistake. There's only two things you have to get right. And our method of laying out dovetails, I think, without a doubt, is the best way to do it. I can't think of another way that would, if there was a better way to do it, I'd do it. If you're wanting to learn this, this is the way to do it. What was I just about to say? Oh, only two things you have to do. You just have to get the plumb cut, pardon me, get my terminology straight. You got to get the square cut on the tailboard, and you got to get the plumb cut on the pin. Now, come over here. I'm going to show you some guys that are not working with full capacity. First one I want to show you is this. This is Philip Gustafson. He's going to be here in June. Philip Gustafson was in my very first class, combat wounded vet, 2016. And he pulled off a dovetail that I couldn't believe. Never did it in his life. It was incredible. This guy, Omar Milan, happens to be also an EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal, the bomb tech guys, the ones that disarm bombs with the Marines. Got blown up. They would plant one bomb, and they would plant a second bomb to try to take out the guys that were trying to respond to the first threat, and now they started planting a third one. Got him. Blew off this leg below the knee, stripped all the meat off of this leg. It just has a bone wrapped in the skin, has a thing that keeps his foot from falling down. Took out all of this all of this hand, blew the ends off of these fingers, and over here took all the meat, including his elbow, off of this arm. They took muscle out of his back and they made him they put some meat back on here, but these two fingers didn't work. So he's operating with two fingers and a thumb, holding his dovetail saw. I wrapped some tape around it that made it a little more cushiony. That was his first dovetail. You look at that. I was so impressed. Could not believe it. This one below was Charlie. Charlie was in our class 2 classes ago. April class. Yeah. Charlie had numerous TBIs. That stands for traumatic brain injury. So they've been blown up. All kinds of things that cause those. And he was slow. We started cutting dovetails on Tuesday. And this was Friday. When Charlie finally brought this to me, I looked at it and I said, holy smokes, Charlie. I said, I know you want to take it home, but if you give it to me, I'll put it up on my wall. And there it is. So first attempt at a dovetail. Check that out. Check both of those out. And then tell me that there's a technique that would work better than that. In our class a year ago, October, we had Jack Hughes, 95-year-old World War II vet. And Jack's dovetail was, I looked at it and thought, if I was 35 years old, I'd think this was great. Here he is, 95. Absolutely amazing. The best method for cutting dovetails that you will find anywhere. Now, credit where credit is due. Ernest Joyce wrote a book in 1971, I think, was the date. I got it right here, let me grab it. Called The Encyclopedia of Furniture Making. It was revised in 1987 by Alan Peters, my mentor. Encyclopedia of Furniture Making. I'll just show you where I got the inspiration and what happened. So, Ernest Joyce, 1970, sorry, I said 71. It was revised in 87. So if you go through, this is the best book, as far, if you want a book that's complete on everything to do with hand tools and power tools when it comes to woodworking, this is the one to have. Just, you got to have it. Your library won't be complete without it. And your library could be complete with just it. So if you go to the dovetail section, which is right here, so on page 172, this is what I used to go to sleep with every night, reading this. So in here, one of the problems that you'll encounter when you start cutting dovetails with the old method, which you'd lay your tailboard on top of your pin board and you would use a knife to try to trace the tails in the pins. Well, you're trying to make a knife mark in the end grain of the pin board, and the knife wants to follow the grain. So it was always problematic, because the second that knife got away from the side of the tail, now you didn't have an accurate line to follow. So here's what he did. He put his tailboard on top of his pin board before he removed the waste. See, the waste is still there. He's made the saw cuts, but the waste is still there. Then he would take his saw, he would put it in the kerf and drag it through. Well, what I thought was so great about that is because that saw was in the same kerf it had just made, it can't move left or right. So when you drag that saw through, that mark on the corresponding pin board is going to be exactly where it needs to be in terms of not drifting away from the side of the tail. The problem is this. If you can think this through, when you remove the waste, what is left, the pin has to fill all of this space between the two tails, including the saw kerf. You have made your mark in the saw kerf, which means you have essentially marked on the pin down here. So now your dovetail saw has left a mark on the pin. You've got to cut to the side of that mark, and in doing so, your saw wants to slide into the kerf. If you can prevent that from happening, you still have this saw mark in your finished kerf. If you're trying to do drawers, in order to plane that off, your drawer's not going to fit. It's going to be too loose. That's why I didn't do it. I thought, oh, it's such a great idea, but it stopped short. Kramer. So in 2014, what's that, Frick?
It's Frank Costanza's move.
Oh, Frank Costanza's. Yeah, but Kramer got in trouble for trying it. My wife. In 2014, as I was going up in glasses, I'm missing the line. Shoot, we used to get there with the bench lamp, and you would be angling the light in every possible way, trying to highlight the knife mark. If you made the knife mark too deep, you lost your accuracy. So you're trying to make it as fine as possible. And I was missing the line. It was just getting really frustrating. So I got thinking about it one day, and I said, okay, that's such a good idea, but why is it that the knife mark that the saw made is in the wrong spot? What do we do to get it out of there? Well, simple. Move it over by one saw kerf. That would put it exactly where it needs to be. How do you do that? Well, when I first did it, I took my saw and I held my saw like this until it was flush. And I said, okay, that's one saw kerf. That takes care of one side of the tails, and then you got to go the other way to take care of the other side of the tails. So then I thought, okay, well, there's got to be a way of doing it a little more accurate than that. So I would take my dovetail saw and I would set it, actually I used to set it on the side of my plane to make it really accurate. I'd set it on the side of my plane, like this. I would take my marking gauge, drop it down under the saw, putting all my weight back here, and that would represent one saw kerf. One saw kerf being the saw plate, the blade, the set on one side plus the set on the other side. And then I would come over here and I would use that like this, move it over. That would give me one saw kerf, and to do the one below, I'd put the cutter on the side. The head of the tool now is sitting a little bit at one kerf away from the edge, and I would slide it over like that. Problem is, it's a little bit awkward trying to do that, especially if you're new. And then Sean was in the class in 2017. He came up with an idea just doing this, putting that little bit of an offset on a piece of wood. And now you could hold it like that. Well, we end up turning it into a product, giving you 4 different settings so you could adjust it. You can make it a little tighter, a little loose, depending on what you needed. You could also compensate for your set reducing as you sharpen your saw over the years. Anyway, so that's where the idea came from. The success of it is, I've taught lots of dovetail classes. I used to have 12 in every class. I can't tell you how many times a year I would be somewhere teaching it. If we doing it the old way, if we got 3 good dovetails, 3 students got good dovetails at the end of the day, that was a successful class. Now we do it, and on a class of 12, using this new method, we may get 8, possibly 9 dovetails that you could put beside mine, and you can't tell mine from theirs. So if that interests you, there's a sale on right now, isn't there? Mm-hmm. That interests you. Everything, if you're a vet, well, explain that, because if you're a veteran, period, how's that work? If you were a military veteran, don't have to be combat wounded, you get a 15% discount at our store on everything?
Yep.
On everything?
Well, except for limited edition and training.
Except for limited edition and training. Everything else, including workbenches. 15% discount, and that goes until?
Monday.
The end of Monday?
Yeah.
End of day Monday. So you can save yourself a load. If you're not a veteran, you get a 10% discount. That'll more than cover your shipping, because we've got new shipping rates with UPS that cut our shipping, some cases, end up half. So you can get the stuff that you need. All right, Frick. I want to give him a little tour. I want to show him what we're doing. You ready, Jake?
Well, let's take a question.
Oh, fine. Question.
Where do you plan on going? Because the video doesn't transmit back here.
Well, we're just right here. We're just going right here.
Oh, I thought you were going to the new showroom.
No. Oh, it would be nice to show them a new showroom.
Yeah.
We can't go over there?
No.
Have you? Okay, I'll take a question.
Jason Brown in the chat says,
Hey, Jason.
have you thought about your solution for supporting dovetail boards using the Mox device?
Don't take that question. Can't you edit these?
No.
I actually have thought of it.
What did he say?
The Mox and Vice question. Jeff's going to solve that. I'm sending him a Mox and Vice. Jeff O'Connor's dad just had broke his hip the other day, got operated on yesterday. Mr. O'Connor, I hope you're feeling better. Be up and around. He's got good bones, I hear, so that means that's positive. So anyway, Jeff's gone out there to help with his mom, and he needs a vise, so we're sending him a Mox and Vice. So Jeffrey, I need you to solve the problem of holding the board the same way we would do it on the bench using the Mox and Vice. I want something that flips up, something that's really easy. Why am I looking over here?
Can't be easy,
Can't be easy?
because you need the plane.
Figure it out. Jeff will figure it out. He'll come up with something.
I'm not so sure he will.
Yes, he will. I have faith. Is Jeff on tonight?
Nope.
You don't know?
He isn't.
No, he's not. Might not have got the memo. Is there a question, Frick? Another one?
Hi, Rob. Emerson from Brazil.
Emerson in Brazil. Howdy.
Do you have any trouble using a super hardware like Ipe as dovetail joints?
Miserable stuff. I wouldn't do it. I've cut them in ebony. I've cut them in cocobolo. If I sat and thought about it, I could probably come up with another 3 or 4 really hard woods. But Ipe, no, as far as I'm concerned, Ipe is not a pretty wood. If you think so, then that's your choice. So I would not cut dovetails in Ipe, wreck my saw. Stuff is like concrete. So no, there's got to be something better to work with than that. That's a rock guys does a piece of wood. Hard stuff. Okay, let's go. So here's what we're doing. We had a big problem and we came up with a solution. So I'll tell you the story real quick. We have an online workshop, so we try to put out 3 45-minute episodes each week. This is a membership site. If you're a combat wounded vet, you get it for free for life. Contact us. So, and in this online workshop, we teach you how to build furniture. So you follow us through the process from design right through to the applying the finish. So the current project that we've been working on for how long, Frick?
2011? Oh, no, this one.
Yeah,
Seems like that one.
it's a long one.
Yeah, we're at episode 1. I don't know.
One?
In the upper 100s.
Upper 100s. So this was the original prototype, which, by the way, we're going to put it back together and sell it. So if you're interested in it, let us know. You can buy the prototype. This is the finished one. This one is going to be somehow sold to raise money for the Purple Heart Project. It's made out of walnut with aspen for highlight wood. So that's what the through wedge and the dovetails are. The drawers lock. Isn't that cool? You got the little trays with the little tiny dovetails in them. So cute. So here's the problem that we've been solving. And whenever I do something like this, I mean, I'm designing it from scratch, right? So it's not like you're following the plans. And we tried to make it so that everything was in very user-friendly. So some of the tools are out, but the block plane sits here. All the surfaces that have are leather covered. This is where your 5.5 sits. Your saws sit in the saw till so that you can access them quite readily. One on each side. These are your 3 main saws: dovetail, joinery crosscut, medium tenon. Dovetail's the one you use the most, so that's when it's out here in the front. Yes, you have to move 2 if you want to get the one in the back, but it doesn't get used as often. This is where your grip sits for the side of your plane, yada yada. So on these 2, what do we call them? On these 2 wings are another series of tools. This wing is going to have all of your chisels. This is where your 6-inch square sits, your 2-inch square, your 12-inch rule sits in here, your 6-inch sits in there. Your Kerfix 10 sits in here, your combination, 12-inch combination squares back there, your marking gauge is there, your mallet. Over here you have your brace. All of your bits are going to be on a separate arm panel that swings out. You've got your egg beater drill here, you got your mallet, you've got your winding sticks. Problem is when you go to remove this stuff, it moves, the drawer moves. So we need to find a way to hold this, park this in that position, so when you're removing stuff, this doesn't move. Then it's got to be undoable, because then you're going to come in and you're going to close it like this.
Why does that look wet?
What?
Why does that look wet?
Feels wet too. I'll have to go through and scrape it. It shouldn't, unless I put it on there and forgot to wipe it off. I bet that's what happened. I went in to just dress a little spot, but that's only the second coat. We got to come up with a way of locking this. I think we've got that solved. And then the drawers are locked from the inside. So I don't want anything showing on the outside. I don't want toggles or anything like that. So here's what we came up with. We worked on this today, filmed both of them. So the area that we're going to use is going to be right here and right here. It's the same on both sides. So we are going to drill a hole 3/8 of an inch in diameter through here. It'll be in about 3/4 of an inch through this piece, partially through this one, and we'll drill this one with a guide block and use that same guide block to continue the hole into this one so they perfectly align. You'll notice if you look up here, because of the hinge, these when they're closed like this, there's a tapered gap. So the way this works, in order for it to line up, the hole drilled in this piece is actually going to be at a bit of an angle. So here's what we came up with. Metalworking with our power tools, or our woodworking tools. So this piece of 3/8 brass with a 3/16 threaded hole is going to be embedded in this piece, but not out all the way through. It'll go in there, really only needs to go in there about 1/4 of an inch. It'll be flush with the face. So when you close your door, you will see that brass, the end of that, but it'll be flush and it should look pretty neat. Nice and neat, I should say. On this one, remember now, you've got to be able to move your saw. So on this one, this piece right here is going to be embedded in this hole, flush on this side, but when it's closed, we don't want to see this hanging out like that, so that's going to be held back in here. So what we did, this is hard to explain. We went on the lathe and we turned a little, what do we call this, Jake?
Shoulder.
So a little shoulder right there. Then we tapped this side, we tapped that side. We drilled this out, but we drilled all the way through with a little better than 3/16, but it's a larger diameter on this end. So there's a little shoulder in there that comes up against this piece so that this one can't come all the way through. This piece is drilled out, but it's also tapped all the way in here. So that there's going to be a spring, a light spring that'll go on here. This will be threaded in and Loctited so that it stays, so it won't come off. Your spring will be in here. This will go in. This now gets held in place. When it's not in use, this is going to be sticking out like that. But you're not going to have to move the saw when it's not in use, because when it's not in use, that means everything is closed up. Once you open the door, you will thread this through. That'll go in there and it'll hold these two pieces tight. This will be in small, and this has to be cut down a little bit more because it's got to be able to clear that. I just didn't cut it down enough, but that's how it'll happen. So that'll end up sticking out just that much. So you can, the saw blade won't bump into it because the handle prevents it from going over any farther. So it'll be one there, and that's how we're going to hold them. And they'll be all polished up nice, so it should actually look pretty good. Took a lot of thinking to come up with that. And multiple screw-ups. Who do we have to say hello to, Frick?
I haven't received anything yet.
Ken, send Frick a text, would you, with some names that we can give a shout out to. Got any more questions?
Yeah, Paul Laws in the chat.
Hi, Paul.
This kind of goes along with the last one. There are many attractive woods available. Are they all suited for dovetails, or should we avoid some?
There are many, say that or read it again, please.
There are many attractive woods available. Are they all suited for dovetails, or should we avoid some?
Well, that Ipe one is just, it makes a great deck because it's so durable. I don't know if you necessarily want to avoid them. I don't think there's any wood that wouldn't work as a box. And if it works as a box, then you can dovetail the corners. So I wouldn't say that there's any wood to avoid. I don't beat myself up on something that doesn't have a good payback, meaning if I'm going to use a really super hard wood, I'm going to make sure that it's worth the effort. Something like cocobolo or Macassar ebony or Vera wood or snake wood. Oh. So no, I don't think there is. Is there a lot of questions?
No.
Okay, well, I'm going to get a couple
A
pieces
bunch
of
of
wood.
people mentioned magnets.
Yeah. So, okay, yeah. Well, the reason we didn't want to use magnets is a couple of reasons. I don't want the magnets to show. And we were going to solve that because we were simply going to put the magnets almost, you drill a hole almost all the way through and almost all the way through. Put your magnets in, fill them from the back side. You don't see them. And when you go back here, it catches. The only problem with that is the fact that they're not actually touching and they've got wood between them means you're only going to be so strong. Yes, you could put in 2. I'm afraid that the biggest problem is the magnets have a tendency to attract dirt, believe it or not. Anywhere you've got magnets where can I think it's over in that other cabinet. It's over in that other cabinet. We have the magnets that hold the chisels in, and even though they're in behind, you don't see them on the surface, but it shows through on the, that means they're metal floating around in the air. That was probably the primary reason. I might revisit that.
What?
Magnets. I like this. I like the cool factor of that. We're going to, I'm going to experiment. I'm going to do this. Actually, I'm going to have Willie make them, and we're going to try it on this. But maybe we'll actually do the magnets on one of these doors too and just see. Because that would certainly be an easier solution. If it had enough holding power. Yeah. Do you want me to try to cut a minimalist dovetail using just the dovetail saw, the marking gauge?
A lot of people want to know exactly what the Sean shim is for, like how it works.
All right. I got to go get a couple pieces of wood.
Ken also suggested that because it's a very common customer question as well.
Oh, is it? All right. Well, that's what we'll do. Can you hear me if I talk while I'm go look for some wood?
Yep.
Somewhere in here, there should be a big pile of dovetail wood all ready for the next class. And there is.
Right.
Hopefully it's all
For those asking
nicely
about Jake's baby.
sun, not chewed up at all.
Are we still talking?
Oh, here's some good stuff.
He's still talking.
This
So
is
everyone knows
perfect.
Jake's baby is due on Monday.
Bentley.
So hopefully sometime next week.
Bentley, do me a favor and bring me a glass of water, please. Perrier would be even better. All right, I got some. Excuse me. I'll get my shooting board. Grab my 5.5. Grab my grip. Set up my shooting board or my plane so that the blade is parallel to the sole. You got to check that before you use your shooting board. Set that on there. And your shooting board, because I always often put wax on there, will end up with some crap right here. So I take my square and just run that right along there. Get rid of that stuff. Put my grip on there. Makes your shooting board so much more accurate. I'm going to use 2 pieces of wood. We want the sides to be square, straight and square. That's all part of the way the Sean shim works. Then I'm going to square up the ends. Cut a little chamfer on one side. You see the difference in the color? Flip it over, putting the chamfer on the far side. Nice and clean. Do the same thing on this piece. Flip it around. Pull it out from the fence. Cut my little chamfer, flip it over. Didn't cut enough, do it again. Flip it over. One more. Here we go. Okay.
Can I do
Now-
the quick shout out?
Yep.
Sid from Moramukto is here.
Sid, Nee, John, Jake, what do you call him, Jake? John Sidney?
Jack
Sid,
Lane.
well, you're going to have to introduce yourself. We don't even know you anymore. It's been so long since you've been here.
Jack Lane's on.
Hi, Jack.
Michael Doto.
Michael.
Mikkel Miller.
Mike.
And Paul Morrison is on.
Paul. Isn't Paul already? I thought Paul was heading to sea. So Paul is our commander. Canadian Navy, has his own ship. He's heading out Monday. How long has he gone for, Jake?
6 weeks, 8 weeks, 8 weeks.
Can we say where he's going? Top secret?
Yeah, probably.
Better not. Anyway, he stopped in to see us the other day. It was great to see you, Paul. Come back anytime. Okay, is that it?
Yep. For now.
So I'm going to label these tailboard, pin board. Use my marking gauge to determine the thickness of the tailboard so I can then scribe that on the faces inside and outside of the pin board. Then I set it
Are
on...
you gonna do a minimalist?
No, I'm doing...
And use.
No, because I'm going to show them how to do this. Drop it down. So I'm measuring the thickness of the pin board, and I'm going to take that to the tailboard. Oh, shoot. Poor board's coming apart. Go all the way around. The tailboard. Now, put our tailboard in the vise, get it standing plumb, and lay out our joint. I usually use dividers, but I'm going to go a little bit quicker. So draw a line across the end, up the face, flip it over and do the same thing on this side. Those are usually about 1/4 of an inch. That's a little bit smaller than that tonight. And then we're going to divide that in 3. That's close. I usually use dividers, but square my line, come up the face, square my line, come up the face, repeat. Did you, Brentley? Did he bring me a glass of water?
Yeah.
Where? Thank you. Okay, mark your waist. Put an X so that you know which side to be cutting on. Try to blast through this quick. Remember, these cuts have to be perpendicular across the end, so when you set your saw in there, make sure you're looking at nothing but line. Stop at the baseline. Go to the next one. I always wipe the sawdust out of the teeth so I can see that line unobscured. Then go the other way. Okay. Now pay close attention. This is the part that we explain how the Sean shim works. I'm just going to use my chisel to get rid of that fuzz created by the saw. Now you're going to want to order this stuff. Can they see? This is automotive refinished masking tape. We stock it in 3/4 and 1.5 inches. And I'm going to take a strip and I'm going to put it on the back or the inside. That's the show's face side. It's on the inside. And I just crossed the line. So a little bit of it is on above the gauge line, the rest is below. And I'm going to put 4 layers, one right on top of the other. 3, and that is 4. Okay, make sure it's on there well. Now I'm going to trim it off with my little knife. My marking gauge is still set. I'll verify it. So I'm going to use that to slice through the tape where I crossed over the line. And then I'm going to carefully grab that little bit of tape and pull it off. Okay? So that's giving me a little tape wall right on the gauge line. I'm going to take my pin board put it in the vise, and I need that pin board to be sitting flush with the top of the plane, okay? Like that. Set this back. Now my tail board is sitting on top of my pin board. Notice I haven't removed the waist. That little ledge or that wall comes right up against the inside of the pin board and holds those two pieces perfectly aligned. So if I run my thumb back here like that, it's flush. Now I'm going to use my dovetail marking knife. There's my dovetail marking knife normal. Here's my dovetail marking knife with a sawtooth blade. So this little blade is the exact same as that blade, meaning the saw that I use to cut those that's the same blade. When I put that in there, it doesn't wiggle side to side. It fits in there perfectly. I can almost have it sit in there. Doesn't move. And I'm going to do this to mark my pins. But I have to make sure that when I'm done, that the pins, when they're marked, okay, focus on this real closely. Ultimately, the pin, we're going to call it a half pin. This piece right here, when I remove this piece with the X on it, this half pin has to fill the area from here right to the side of the tail, which includes this piece of waste and the saw curve. Can't forget the saw curve. I want to put my knife down like this, my sawtooth blade. I want to put it down there like that. I want to make a mark in that second piece of wood so I know exactly where to saw. But if I left it flush, right? If I left it flush like that, that would make this piece below, down here, too thin to fill that gap, that opening, when this is removed, by that saw curve. See? I would end up taking off from this piece down here just that amount. And when I'm over here, I'd have just that amount on one side and just that amount on the other. I'd end up with a gap, the width of that saw blade on both sides. Can't have that. So enter the Sean shim. Sean McDermott, take a bow. It says 23, 24, 25, and 26. If you measure my saw curve, maybe all this for dramatic effect will make people remember. If you take a digital, not a digital, but a, what do we call this? Caliper, and we put it right there. If we put it down here, it measures 20 thousandths of an inch. If we move it up here, it should measure 24 thousandths of an inch, because that includes the set. Each of these teeth are offset from the saw plate by 2 thousandths of an inch. Every other one is this way, the opposite ones are that way. Means on my saw curve is going to be 24 thousandths of an inch. That means that I need to move this board over that way. All we're doing right now is thinking about this right here, this piece right here. How do we keep this piece down here from being too small because of the saw curve? We have to move it over that way by a saw curve. Saw curve happens to be 24 thousandths of an inch thick. I like to make them 25, just a little bit more. So I'm going to use this. It has, see how it's made? This step right here is 25 thousandths. This step right here is 24 thousandths. You'd think I would use 24, but on pine I'm going to use 25. I'm going to set it like that. See, that little lip? So now when I move this over to touch that, there's a 25 thou step right there. I'm going to hold this firmly. I'm going to use my sawtooth blade. I'm going to go down there, and I'm going to drag that through. I'm going to do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Now, I'm going to put a T. T represents tail, and I'm going to circle it. T, tail, T, tail. So to treat this piece, which is to the right of the tail, I cut in that slot. So what works for the right of this tail probably works for the right of this tail. So I'm going to go down here like this, do the same thing, drag through 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And if it works for that tail, it'll probably work for this tail. So I'm going to do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So I've effectively taken care of the right side of each tail. This one, and this one. Now I got to take care of that one. So what am I going to do? Well, I've got to move this board over that way by a saw kerf. So I'm going to take my shim and I'm going to use the smaller offset. I'm going to set it down just like that. You can see the gap. I'm going to take my tailboard, I'm going to slide it over. So now if I remove the shim, this tailboard is overhanging the pin board by 25 thou. If we went to the left in order to handle the right side of the tail, we just move this to the right, that should handle the left side of the tail. So I'm going to go to the left side of the tail. I'm going to do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if it works for that one, it works for this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it works for this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, I always do all of my measurements from the same side. If there were any discrepancy in the width of these two pieces, this isn't going to work if you measure from this one and then from that one. So I always do it from this one. Okay? When I remove that, I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 marks that I can actually set my saw right into, so there's no guessing on where the saw should start to cut because it's already started the kerf. The only thing I have left to do is to come in here, move that sawing fuzz. I'm going to use my dovetail marker like this, and I'm going to draw some lines connecting the gauge line to the, okay, this is waist, this is waist, this is waist. I'll transfer it down here as well. These are the pieces that are being removed. This is a pin, I'm keeping that. This is a pin, this is a pin, this is a pin. These we usually call are half pins. So I'm going to draw my line on the half pin, which means I'm going to draw to the side of that mark I made. On this one, I'm going to go to the opposite side so that my mark is actually staying on the pin. Same thing on this one. Oilers are playing tonight. For my brother's sake, I hope they win. Make sure this is standing plumb. Sorry if you're a Dallas fan.
We do have a Dallas fan in the...
Well, that's too bad. Got to remain loyal to the oil.
He was kind of hoping that you were pulling for Dallas.
Well, hope away. Okay, so saw goes in the kerf. All of my attention is focused on the line. I don't even think about up here. Sometimes I'll actually put my thumb on here just to keep that in there. I start making my cut. Whatever corrections I need to. Keep blowing the sawdust away. Follow the line right down to the baseline. Go to the next one. Do the same thing. Follow the line. Right to the baseline. Follow the line. Turn and go the other way. Move your body. Saw cuts so fast. All right, let's have a look at these. Make sure that we stayed parallel to our line. Now, if anything, if I look really close, that one's good. That one's good. This one's off a little bit. See that? Just started to go off a little bit. So did this one. That one's good. So what I can do, I gotta put my...
I'm going to throw in some questions here.
Okay.
Joe wants to know if there's a way to clamp the tailboard to make sure it doesn't move when using the knife to make your marks.
Yes. Lean on it, Joe. Come on, lean on it. You don't need to clamp it. Just lean on it. And make sure you don't have your, you know, if you're this close with your plane, if you move it way back here, now that pressure, there's a lot more pressure right here on the front, so it'll hold it in place. But I've never had a problem with that. what I'm going to address right now is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to correct this. I'm going to put my saw down the kerf, and I'm going to lean this way. I'm going to lean against the waist, and I'm going to let the right side of the teeth just slowly pair the side of that pin where I just didn't quite keep it perfectly in line. That one isn't either. A lot of these screwed up. Should have taken my time. That's it. Now, your next move would be to take your fret saw, drop to the bottom, and zip right across there. Hold your saw like this so that you can see plumb. Put a quick edge on this chisel. I'm using my 1000 grit Cosman diamond stone to get it started, meaning my secondary bevel. Step over here to my 16,000 Shapton, raise it up a little bit and do my tertiary. Lay it on its back, polish off the burr, and there you go, you're ready. Wipe off the moisture. Standing so that I can see plumb. Set my chisel in the gauge line. Go halfway down. Left a little too much material there, so I'll come in and do a little preliminary chop first. Then I'll put the chisel in the gauge line. Go halfway down. Oh, I did it again, Jake. Old habits die hard, man.
Oh, yeah. Chop from the back side.
Yeah. Set the chisel right in the gauge line. Angle it a little bit forward, standing plumb, but angle it forward to ride the face of the pin. Cuts down some of the work. Then we'll do the other side. Put this piece in the vise. Grab my chisel, holding it firmly with my left hand. We'll go in there and just make sure those corners are nice and clean. We did a good job riding that bevel because nothing had to be done on 2 or 3 of these. That little bit removed. And there, your pin board's done. Once you're satisfied you didn't screw up the pin board, you can come into your tail board. Just going to put this on the front so I can see that line a little bit better. Same idea. Take my fret saw, drop to the bottom. Remove that waste. Now we've got to remove the spot for the half pin, and you got to be really careful here because this is highly visible in your drawer. You open the drawer and the first thing you see is how the drawer side comes into the drawer front. And if there's a gap there, their expectations drop. I've cut a little trough with my chisel so I can lay the saw in there and I can lean it up against that little wall and know that I'm square this way, and then I only have to focus on making the plumb cut. Let me repeat that. Now I use this little racing stripe on there to eyeball that so that it's level. Come in here on the waist side. This is the waist. Angle it and go to the bottom of that marking gauge line. And that leaves me a little trough with a nice square wall right there. Come in with my saw, lay it right up against it. Put this in the vise. Finish that cut because it's tough to go into an angled corner. This is an angled corner with a saw that cuts square on the bottom. If you do, you'll end up sawing into the side of your tail. Now, I'm going to grab my narrower chisel, in this case my 1/4 inch, set it right in there, go down about halfway, careful to stand, keep this, why is this thing not sitting flat? Careful to keep your chisel standing plumb. Flip it over, finish from this side. Get those corners clean. Put this in the vise, working from the face side. Push that material out. Make sure those corners are nice and clean. When they're clean, final inspection. Want to make sure there's no material sitting on top of my gauge line on either side. And I'm going to take my, I'm holding this, so this is the face side. I'm working on the inside. I'm going to cut a little chamfer down the inside edge of each tail. I didn't start out here in the end. I went in about a 1/16 of an inch before I did that. Then clip those off. Choke up on the chisel so that if you slip and stick it into yourself, at least you're not going to go in too deep, as opposed to this. Now, this goes in the vise. Butter them all up with glue. Never test fit. And put it together. I didn't have time to get the glue. Now, we'll plane off those marks and we'll submit it for a grade. Oops, grains run the wrong way. Tearing up the board. So I'll back off the blade. That might take a much lighter cut. That was a nasty piece of wood, it's tearing badly. Flip it over and do the pin side. Now if this is protruding a little bit, make sure you flush that off first before you go the full length of the board. Otherwise you'll introduce a taper to your board that you may not want. We'll flush up the sides. That one is. One pass on here. Okay, now I went a little low on a couple of saw cuts. You'll see them, but look at that closely. I'll show you both sides. Plumb pin cuts. I went a little low on a couple of spots. There's the tail side. There's our joint over here. There's our joint over there. So we could be proud of that, except for having to say, oh, look what we did. And the grain's torn, but that looks like almost like it's coming apart. Okay, there's your dovetail.
TC wants to know that if those of us that are less skilled than you, can we do test fits?
No! Never! Never. Nobody's allowed to test fit. If you test fit, you will never get to the point where you won't have to, because you've already blown your opportunity to get that courage. Everything you could learn from a test fit, you will know from what you just did. You check and make sure that your plumb cut, your perpendicular cuts on your tailboard are square. So as long as they are, the saw is going to cut straight, and you don't have to worry about the angles. They can be off a little bit, it doesn't matter. Has nothing to do with the way it's going to fit. So your tailboard is verifiable. What did I verify? I verified that the cuts were square across the end. I normally check, I don't check them with a square anymore because I do it enough. But you check them with a square. So remember, you make the saw cut, you leave the saw in the board, you come in here and you check and make sure that it's within 1/8 of an inch over 6 inches. The other thing I did with the tailboard is I looked to make sure there was no material sitting on top of the gauge line. That means the tailboard checks out. Everything I need to know about that, I already found out. Then we're going to offset the tailboard to mark the pins. And we know that if we offset the tailboard with the Sean shim and we put our saw in that exact same curve, it has to be right. It can't be wrong. Got to make sure your plumb cuts are right, are plumb. And we did that, remember, because we drew lines. We had to go in and correct a couple. It wasn't a big deal, but we did. So they were plumb. We know that works. We made the saw cuts were made. We cleaned out we removed the waste, squared up the bottom, right, because we followed our gauge line. So now we have our pin board and we know that it's right. Yeah, put the two together. Don't test fit. Put glue on it and put it together. That's how it works. All of these were done that way. I don't let my guys test fit. They get in trouble if that gets them doing that. You will never not be able to do it if you do it the first time. You have to beat that habit. Do not do it. Resist. Ask Jeff O'Connor. Ask Kyle Perrell. Ask Luther Sheely. Ask Ken Anthony. Ask any of these. Brett Nelson. Brett will be with me. Brett will be with me at Mark Spagnola's. Look at his dovetail. Perfect. Took him forever, but perfect. Marshall Rommel. Justin. Beautiful dovetail. And he'd cut a few before he came, but wow, perfect work. Perfect work. No testing. No testing. Frick, next. Does everybody now understand where the Sean shim comes in? This is an extremely valuable piece of brass. Get it? We pay Sean a royalty on every one we sell. Makes him happy. Makes us happy. Make you happy.
All right, Mickey in the chat wants to know.
Mickey.
Rob, I often double up boards when cutting dovetails to save time. Do you ever do the same?
Yep. You can do that. Remember? I said that in the beginning. It gives you a line that is twice as long, even easier to follow. And it speeds it up. I mean, it really does. You can't do that on your pin board, but on your tailboard, it cuts your time in half. You do them two at once. Next, Rick.
Steve Gunderson in the chat says, Have you ever thought about making dovetail saws that will not let one saw deeper than required for different depth dovetails?
Repertoire, please.
Reducing the depth of cut so that somebody couldn't saw deeper.
Oh, no, you just have to pay attention to what you're doing. Good light. If I'd worn those and put the light on it, I wouldn't have made that mistake. I was trying to crank it out quick. There's no reason to go below that, and it's something you can do. You can just pay attention. If I pay attention, I don't do that. Although I noticed on that I did a couple of times. Next, Rick.
Are IBC chisels sharper than other chisels?
That's up to you. That's up to you. Chisels, planes, spoke shaves, scrapers. That's up to you. You're the guy that sharpens them. And you have to know how to sharpen. So get your sharpening gear while it's your sale's on. But I get the apprentice kit, probably the best deal. And then just follow. I always tell people, I said, look, if you want to do it as well as I do, then just get the gear, use the same tools I do. Then all you have to do is follow and do exactly what I do, because you got the same gear. If you're trying to adapt that to something your great-grandfather left you that looks like a dish, good luck.
Michael wants to know if you ever have to sharpen the Kerfex 10.
Let me show you what I do with the Kerfex 10. I do dress it up once in a while. And so this is a very unique tool in the way that it works. I'm going to get Jake to come in close on this. So Kerfex 10 has a blade that measures. Should I show them how? Okay, let me explain how this works. I'll just gonna do a little pretend here. So I'm gonna cut some half blinds. So if I was cutting my half blinds, the first thing I would do is set my marking gauge for my end lap, right? And this is going to be my pin board or the drawer front. It's my drawer front. Now I don't want to see the dovetails coming all the way through, so I'm going to take my marking gauge. I'm going to mark a line across the end of the board. This is going to be my tailboard, and it's going to go right to there. So I'm going to use that same setting to determine the length of the tails. Okay? And then I would go through, I'll do a two-tailer. So I'd come over here like this, make that cut, make this cut, make that cut, make that cut. A little off. Now, when I do this, same thing, put the pin board in the vise, set the tailboard back. I'd put my tape on there just like I did. Not going to bother on this one. I'd offset it by the amount. It would have to be right on that line, but that's what the tape would do. I'd be offset by 24, 25 thou, whichever one you're going to use. Now when I take my dovetail marking knife, I can only get in I'll go over on this side. Whoops. I just did what I didn't want to do. I don't want to mark that end lap. I'll show you one bad and one good. See how I ran my line across the end? That's going to show. But I didn't do it there. And then I would come in here, turn it around after I've done them all, I marked them all. Now, my marking gauge line, I need to have that. Where is it? My marking gauge. Am I looking at it? My marking gauge would be set for the width or the thickness of my tailboard, and I would come in here and I'd just grab a line like that. And then I'd have all my cuts started like this. I would take my saw, and all I can do with my saw is saw from this line to this line. So I'd have to have this sticking up as high as I could get it so that I have my clearance down here. I'd put my saw right there. Okay, so all I was able to do was saw from here down to here. But if you were to look at that on the side, if you were to look through like that, this is the saw cut that I've made, right? But I got to remove all this material. Well, that's just a bunch of chopping and paring, pain in the butt. Instead, I take my Kerf X10. This saw kerf is 24 thousandths. This is 25 thou. I put it in here like that. I start it by hand. Just force it into the kerf. Tap it till it goes right to the bottom. Take it out. Move it in a little further. This time I'm going to go right to the back, right to that gauge line. Go right to the bottom. What that has just done is taken my saw kerf right to the bottom. I don't have to go in there with a chisel now and try to clean that up. And of course I would have done the other side, I would have done this one, I would have done that one. How does it work? I have no idea. It somehow pushes the fibers down. It's amazing how it works. What you want is you want that to be square to the side. And you want these edges right here to be nice and sharp. Sharp doesn't mean any particular angle. It just means that where that meets that needs to be nice and sharp. So what I'll do once in a while is I'll take a file, I'll hold this plumb, I'll drag it on my file, and then I'll come over to my, I raised a little bit of a burr on there, I'll come over to my Cosman diamond plate, 1000 grit, and I'll just come in here with my fingers and rub that on both sides just to get rid of that burr. I suppose if you wanted to, you could even do that, but I didn't. Now, what that does is just make that, when I run my thumb like that, you can feel that, that's really sharp. And that just cleans those walls nice and neat. Oh, but if you're cutting half, listen, take this as a sales pitch if you want, doesn't matter. Not gonna change the fact. I would not cut half-blind dovetails without those two tools right there. Those will make your half-blinds. What's your estimate, Jake? How much time?
Oh,
Half?
definitely in half.
These two tools will cut the time it takes to half-blind in half, and your success rate will probably more than double. And why? Probably, first of all, because it cut your time in half, so it maintains you. You're not fatigued. And when you have to start doing the job that this does, it requires you to come in and pare the side of your tail horizontally to try to remove that material that I showed you on whatever part I showed you on this, right? That part right there that we did with the Kerfex 10, you would have had to have done that with your chisel, paring along the side. And it's so easy to end up taking off a little too much of this, and there goes your fit. Lickety split, oh, fantastic cutting half blinds, absolutely. Buy them on sale, 15% off, steal. Next frick. I sound like I should be selling knives or something. Ginsu knives.
John wants to know how you determine what really sharp is on a chisel. Let me answer this one.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Frick will give us a demonstration. Not. Nope. Really sharp. Well, really sharp is when you can take that chisel and you can cut through the wood with, Jake, I need you here. Jake. Oh, playing with the kids. I need you to come in close. Where's John? Frick? Where's John?
It was in the chat, so he didn't say.
Chat.
John Root is his name.
Okay, John. Really sharp is easy to determine, and it has to do with results and effort. So when you can take your chisel and you can cut through the wood with minimal effort and leave a nice clean surface behind, I'm not applying excessive force. It just floats through that like butter. If that's messing up the fibers and you're really having to push hard, then it's not sharp. That's how you tell when it's really sharp. The way it cuts. Here's the thing. Here's my little lesson on sharp when it comes to hand tools. And it doesn't get any simpler than this. This is a piece of pointed steel with a handle. How can it be any simpler as far as the tool goes? But when you use this, and it's cordless, remember, you're the power. When you use this, you want to have as much control as possible. And if you could put that on a chart, you want 100% control. 100% control means you're going to get the result that you want, right? Because this is powered by you, on this side of the graph where I'm aiming for my 100%, on this side of the graph, which represents the power I'm applying, we want to keep down here. Because the harder you push, these two are inversely connected. The harder you push, the less control you have. It's real simple, just like that. That's why they always tell you that a dull tool is the most dangerous. Requires more effort, less control. And of course, what dictates how much effort you have to apply is the sharpness of the tool. The sharper it is, less effort, more control. Simple. Apply that to everything you do with edge tools in woodworking. Next, Frick. My suggestion, by the way, if you plan, I'm going to lay this out. I'm really hitting you hard on this sale thing because I didn't know about it, but it's up. If you want to learn to cut dovetails, here's what you want. I'm going to call this the bare minimum. This is the saw. I developed this saw in 2008. We sell thousands of them. We make them right here in the shop. You want to get this saw. You have the option of getting it with a larger handle. If your hand measures more than 4 inches from here to here, then you need our large handle. Under 4 inches, the regular one will do. Get the dovetail saw. Get the dovetail marking knife with the sawtooth blade. Okay? Get our marking gauge. Second most important tool, even though I listed as number 3rd, but I'm not doing these in order. Get a marking gauge. It's got to be sharp, and it's got to lock positively, and it needs to be comfortable in your hand in order for you to do well with it. Where is it? The Sean Shim. Fret saw. It's the easiest and the fastest way to remove the waste. Instead of banging and crashing with the chisel, you get good with your fret saw, you just got a little bit to remove with the chisel. You can't get a straight enough line with that little wee thin blade. Your chisel has to go in there and give you that. Dovetail marker, these are made by Jesse Roofinch, combat wounded vet that does a lot of work for us. Best craftsman I know. Dovetail marker. I assume you have a mallet. If you don't, we make them right here. Resin impregnated maple heads. We turn those right here. You're going to want a 1/4 and a 1/2 inch chisel. And you're going to want, hey Rex, we're filming please. You're going to want this tape, create that little wall. It's amazing what it'll do for you. Improves your accuracy. So if you're doing through dovetails, there's what you need. There's the tools. Don't ask me what they cost. Go on the website. It'll show you. If you're doing half blinds, into that you're going to want to throw your half blind dovetail chisel, your Kerf X10, and that's it. That's it.
Ian wants to know
Ian.
If you're dovetailing all 4 corners for a drawer, is there any particular order that you prefer?
If I'm dovetailing all 4 corners for a drawer,
Yeah, what order do you go in, basically?
as far as chopping them, cutting them, that doesn't matter. I do, but I mean, if you're doing one drawer versus several, if I'm doing several, I do all the same ones. I'll do all of each one, so that you benefit from the repetition. If I'm just doing one drawer, if I'm building one drawer, I don't think there's any reason why I would pick one corner over another.
And when do you cut the bottom? That's from Jeff
Shanab.
Chapin?
When do I cut the bottom?
Yeah.
What's he talking?
Like
what
you
do
cut the
mean?
bottom before?
The groove?
Yeah.
Well, if you use drawer slips, which I highly recommend, drawer slips increase the width, the wearing surface. If you do drawer slips, you don't cut grooves in them at all. You cut a groove in the front, but not in the sides. If you're not doing that, probably cut them after I've cut the tails. After I've cut the tails, kind of the last thing that you would do. Yeah, now you have to know where that groove is going to be, because obviously on the back, your last tail needs to be sitting at the top of the groove. It's a whole nother lesson. But yeah, I would probably cut the groove last.
Kevin Wickman wants to know, what's the best way to fix gaps? Do you start over or live with it?
What's he talking about?
Gaps in your dovetails.
What gaps? If I had 3 tails and one, I might fix one gap. It would have to be an emergency for me it would have to be do or die for me to do more than one. Otherwise, to start over. I mean, that's, if you do our method, you won't have gaps on this side. If you follow the instructions, you don't have to have tremendous skill. As long as you can make square cuts across the end, plumb cuts down the face, you will not have gaps here. If you screw up a little bit on the plumb cut, you may have a gap back here, but you will not have a gap on this side. On a joint like that, I'd fix one. I'd be more inclined to do it over, because sometimes you can actually do it over faster than you can fix one gap. But not many. And you always fix with wood, not sawdust and glue. You always fix from the end. You always fix from the end grain side. So if there's a gap on the tail, on the tailboard, you're going to fix the pin. You're going to put the sliver of wood you're going to put in is going to be put in so that you see end grain. And on this side, same thing. You'd be fixing it from this side. You always fix so that you're seeing end grain facing end grain. You wouldn't do a long grain fix over here because it'll show up like a sore thumb. Next.
Next one comes from Anthony. He says, how much planing should you plan on doing to finish the dovetail joint, to flush the pin and tails?
Well, that's that question has different answers, because if I'm doing a drawer, when I build a drawer, after I assemble it, the drawer sides are going to be sitting proud of the ends of the pins. And that's my gauge to know it's going to fit, because I pre-fit this piece and this piece to the opening so that they just fit. When I do my layout, I set my marking gauge to be less than the thickness of the tailboard. So if the tailboard was 7/16 of an inch, 7/16 is 14/32, so I might be 12/32, whatever that reduces to. I might set my marking gauge for 12/32, run my gauge my gauge around on this piece and this piece. That means that when you put the joint together, this is going to remain proud of the ends of the pins. Then when it's dry, you plane until you touch the pins here and touch the pins there. Then it should fit the opening. So under those circumstances, you're going to be planing a little bit of wood. If I was building a big bookcase, it's a lot easier to pre-finish all of the pieces before you assemble. Under that circumstance, I'm actually going to finish the dovetail so that the pins and the ends of the tails are sticking above the rest of it. So now all I got to do is come in here and just plane them down to clean it up. If I left it flush, I got to plane that entire surface after it's assembled. That's hard. A lot easier to finish planing one of those pieces when it's sitting as a single board on my bench top, and just plane the ends of the tails and pins down to touch. Did anybody say hello to?
Kevin Smear is on.
Hey, Kev.
A couple people want to know about drawer slips.
Drawer slips? What do you want to know?
What are they and what's their purpose?
Well, so when you build a drawer, you want it to be as light as possible. You don't want a 50-pound drawer that's going to hold 10 pounds worth of clothes. You want a 10-pound drawer that holds 50 pounds of clothes. The dovetail allows you to make a very strong box with relatively thin pieces, because that dovetail here and here is not going to allow this board to twist or warp. It's going to hold it in place. And because of the strength gained at this corner and this corner, this piece can be relatively thin. So if you look at this, my drawer front is probably 7/8 of an inch thick. My drawer sides, I think, are 7/16. So for that reason, I want the sides to be thin. The downside is these get opened a lot. And the wear surface is the bottom of the drawer side. That's wearing on that, inside that box every time you open it. All the weight is on the bottom of that. That'll actually cut a groove in your case eventually. But I can add drawer slips and make my wear surface twice as wide, but not increase the weight of my drawer, because those drawer slips are only that tall. You just see, I purposely made them out of mahogany just to make them an accent instead of hiding it by making it out of the same material as this. So the drawer slip has the groove cut in it to hold the drawer bottom. There's a tongue at the front of the drawer slip that fits into the groove in the drawer front to index it. And then it's made so that after the groove has been cut in it, the top of the drawer slip the top of the groove sits on, in this case, the top of the back, right in here. But then it comes up a little bit. There's a notch so that it has to come up into the box in order for it to house the bottom. In other words, you got to have some meat on both sides of the groove that you cut to slide the bottom into. So it comes up about 1/8 of an inch. So there's a little notch that's been cut here and there that makes this piece fit inside this dimension. There's where it comes out beyond, and the tongue in here goes down into the groove here. Flush on the bottom. You increase your wear surface, minimal increase in weight, means it's going to last a whole lot longer, and it's just the coolest thing to do. The English did a lot. It really raises it. People that, if anybody knows what a drawer slip is, and they see your work and they see drawer slips, they say, "Ooh, this guy knows what he's doing." How's that? Is anybody sending us any money tonight?
Last I heard, Ken said we have about 1,700.
Well, that's a start. When I say sending us money, you're sending money to the Purple Heart Project. We don't take anything out of that. Nobody does. All that money, I think there's a little bit that has to get spent on accounting, but all that money goes to buying plane tickets for this 42. This year we will bring in 42 combat wounded vets from all over, mostly the United States, but we got any foreigners coming? We had some Canadians. We had a Canadian. Andrew came last class. He's local. I don't know if we have any Aussies coming or... Anyway, we fly them in, so that pays for their plane ticket. We house them right here. We feed them all day, every day. We send them home with, $3,000 or $4,000 worth of premium tools, everything you see behind me. Jack Lane organizes the bench brigade. We provide them, we meaning the Purple Heart Project, pays for the vice and the bench dogs. The civilian volunteer, procures the material. We give him the plans. He builds a bench just like our benches out there, and then personally delivers that bench to that vet after he gets home from the class. So to take care of 42 vets each year, this year we've forecasted it to be $350,000 US. Last year we raised enough money to cover 2 of the 6 classes. We had enough money to pay for the plane fares for the other 4 classes. Our goal is to get to the point where it covers all of the expenses. And that's why we do this. So that's where your money is going. And when you hear their stories and you hear, he didn't call me back. I was talking to the manager of the woodcraft store in Kansas City last night. And one of the vets, he couldn't remember his name, that came to our class, and this guy heard the result, and he said, "Wow, I was so touched by what I heard." Big supporter now of what we do. So these guys behind me that represent a small number of the 108, how many have we had, Jake? We were at 172 before we started this year, and we've added...
185.
We're at 185 right now. So we'll be over 200 by the end of this year. Anyway, help us out. Help them out. Yeah, help them out. We're going to cover it regardless. We're never going to stop it because we didn't have enough money. But it would be nice to have others. It's nice to give others the opportunity to kick in. Okay.
Right. Store draw.
Now let's do. Wait, it's 5-2. We got any more questions?
No, we don't. I don't have any other questions.
You have no other questions. Are you lying? Frick, Jake, is he lying? Is he just trying to get out here early? Oh, you're conniving.
I promise you, you will not finish before 10 if we do the draw right now.
We only have to draw 3 dead cats.
It takes you 10 minutes to wrap up, so. I'm not lying.
You lie. You lie like a rug.
People know this.
What?
People know this, that it takes you a while to wrap up. So
They do not. All right. We're going to give away 3 dead cat sweaters. Wasn't Moose coming up tonight? Moose, my friend Moose, who's 76 this year, still plays hockey with us 3 times a week, gives us that's where we get our dead cat sweaters. So let's give away 3 dead cat sweaters to start with.
All right. Second here. Okay, 3 dead cats.
Pardon? Oh, Angie. Shoot. Angie just had a birthday recently. This is Angie. Angie and her sister Lynn do all of our t-shirts, all of our Purple Heart t-shirts. They package them beautifully. They do an amazing job. It's probably our most nicely packaged product we sell. By the way, we get some new tools coming, new stuff coming right away. So big shout out to Angie and Lynn. Thank you. And wait till you see when. Oh, there's a surprise coming your way.
Ready?
Yeah, just go. I can't tell them about the stuff, but just watch make sure you're on our email newsletter because we've got some new tools and new stuff coming I think you're going to really like.
Oh, by the way, who won at golf today?
I think it was me.
No, not even close.
Who was it?
It was me.
Oh, come on, Frick, you cheat.
Okay, we weren't even in the same
How
group.
many mulligans did you take on every?
Jake was part of my group. Come on, Jake. Vouch for me.
4 mulligans.
Yeah, right. All right,
hole?
our first dead cat's going to Vidar Sorvik in Norway.
Ha, Badar in Norway. That will come in handy. You will love that dead cat sweater.
Number 2 is going to Carl Falk in Pulaski, New York.
Carl, Pulaski. You've been to Pulaski.
I haven't been. It's close.
Carl, you'll need that from about October on. Actually, in the summer too.
And finally, Li Zhu Zong in Sydney, Australia.
Li Zhuzong in Sydney, Australia. This is just coming up on their winter. You'll need it. Congratulations. So how many big prizes are we giving away?
I think just one.
Well, we didn't break 2,000.
Jake, do you have access to that?
Well, what did you say last time?
It was $16.91.
Ken, let me know if we went over 2. What are we going to give away, Jake? What are we going to give away?
Something to do with dovetails.
Oh, yeah, we should. Should we give away a dovetail saw? Let's give away a dovetail saw.
Wow.
Big prize. Dovetail saw on the chopping block. Who's it going to?
It is going to.
Here, I'm going to sign this and send it with the dovetail saw.
It's going to Wes Brown in Bowling Green, Kentucky.
To Wes Brown. Wood is good. What's the date? May
25th.
25th, 24. You okay, Wes? I'll send that with your dovetail saw. And you send me back one that you do with it so I can hold it up here in a future show and say, look what Wes did with that saw he won. Price is right.
All right.
Okay, so when are we back?
Until Thursday of the work.
What about the Saturday of the workshop? Oh, we're away.
We're away for a while, so it'll
So
be
we got, yeah. So our next live will be the Thursday of the workshop, which will be workshop number 29. Date for me, please. June. June.
June 11th.
No, can't be June 11. You got it right there?
June 10.
June 10 is the Thursday?
Oh, what?
No, the Thursday. The Thursday of the workshop. In other
13th.
words, when we're coming back. How much?
June 13.
June 13. We'll be back here. We'll see you, and have a good end of May. Have a happy. Oh, this is Memorial Day weekend. So big thank you, big shout out to all of our military in all of the allied countries. Appreciate your service tremendously. And please help us find combat wounded vets that need what we do. Tell them about it. They won't find it any other way. Okay? ThePurpleHeartProject.com is the official website of .org. Sorry. You can also find all that information on RobCosman.com, which is our website. Don't forget the sale's on until Monday. Go in there and get some retail therapy. Help yourself. And we will see you soon. Been a blast.